This is Irwindale Speedway outside Los Angeles, and it's likely by the time you're watching this video, it will be shut down for good. And that really sucks. Not just because the House of Drift is getting demolished for an industrial park, but because it's just the latest in the epidemic of racetracks across America closing their doors in recent years. Every time we cover a track closure, there's this huge swell of anger and frustration. Sometimes the reason for the closure is obvious, like a track simply not making enough money to survive. But often, the real killer is a lot more complex. So what's really happening to America's racetracks? And is there anything you can do to save the ones we've got left? Let's find out.
This week we're at Irwindale Speedway.
The character and sportsmanship on this track is incredible.
The importance of the track just can't be overstated.
With over 6,000 seats surrounding a half-mile oval track, as well as an NHRA-sanctioned drag strip, Irwindale has had a 25-year run of hosting some pretty big players in the motorsport world. And on the entertainment side, it was the home of Hoonigan's Burnyard and Donut's most recent season of High Low. But in December of 2024, it is holding its final event. And it's not alone either. Willow Springs International Raceway was put up for sale earlier this year. Sac Raceway in Northern California was forced to close in 2023. And even automotive icons like Laguna Seca have been embroiled in legal battles that would threaten to close the track. But you might have noticed something similar about all these tracks. They're all in California.
The state accelerated moves to ban sales of new gas-powered vehicles.
Not a DUI checkpoint, a smog checkpoint.
Technology that would prevent you from going more than 10 miles per hour over any posted speed limit.
California.
New York City.
It's no secret that California has had a, shall we say, tenuous relationship with car enthusiasts. The state has some of the strictest registration regulations for vehicles and more environmental organizations than sports teams. At the same time, it's the birthplace of hot rodding, Jeff Gordon, and companies like Shelby American and Edelbrock. One of the most recent high-profile battlegrounds for Golden State v. Gasoline has been Laguna Seca. A group called the Highway 68 Coalition filed a lawsuit against Laguna Seca, saying that local residents didn't like the noise of the track. To all of us, it seemed pretty obvious that if you don't like the noise of a racetrack, don't move next door to a world-famous racetrack. But it turns out the real issue was a little more complicated than that. The County of Monterey had recently signed a new concession agreement with Laguna Seca, allowing it to increase the amount of motorsports events held at the track. The Highway 68 Coalition was representing homeowners who had bought homes in the area based on limitations put on the track in earlier agreements. I'm not saying I'm on their side, but basically it'd be like buying a home near train tracks because the city said they'd only run trains there when you're at work, and then suddenly you're hearing talks about a new 4 a.m. to Springfield plan for the next year. The new agreement increased the number of days without any research into how that would affect residents, and that is where the lawsuit came from. The Highway 68 Coalition has actually since dropped the lawsuit, coming to an agreement with the group Friends of Laguna Seca. So in the end, everyone was able to get along. Sounds to me like this one got blown out of proportion, but when someone says the words racetrack, lawsuit, and millionaire Californian homeowners in one sentence, you're pretty sure you know who the bad guys are. But just on the other side of San Francisco, Sac Raceway in Rancho Cordova also had its own issues with nearby homeowners before it closed in 2023. Track owner Dave Smith was forced to put the drag strip up for sale in 2020, saying, quote, "Unfortunately, it looks as if the track may be nearing the end of its battle due to the county's planned residential and commercial development of the area. It is for this reason only that the family has put the land up for sale." Seems pretty cut and dry.
It's kind of part of your life, you know, when you're in the car scene. So to have that taken away from us is pretty sad.
Also cut and dry is the fact that when you take away racetracks, people don't stop racing. They just do it on the street instead. And California wonders why it has a sideshow problem. Oh, I'll be right back. Today's video is brought to you by Factor, a meal prep service that makes it easy to eat right. I live in Los Angeles, where you can find every flavor of food on earth. But when days get busy, I still find myself forgetting meals and snarfing down whatever's in the back of my fridge when I get hungry. Once I got Factor, that stopped being a problem. And now what's in my fridge is a stack of fresh, delicious, pre-made meals. Factor's cheaper than takeout, it's faster than cooking, and it saves trips to the grocery store. With 35 fresh, never frozen weekly menu options and more than 60 weekly add-ons, I've got plenty of flavors to pick from too. Factor can send 4 to 18 meals a week with the flexibility to pause and reschedule deliveries as you go. I'm not about to abandon all my favorite taco trucks here, but Factor has made my meals at home feel more like a treat. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code 50THEDRIVE to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50THEDRIVE at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Oh. So are California Karens also responsible for the loss of Irwindale? Not this time. And in fact, if California was to blame, that wouldn't explain why in the last 3 years we've lost tracks like Bandimere in Colorado, Wild Horse Pass in Arizona, Atlanta Dragway, Heartland Motorsports Park, and Houston Raceway Park. But there's one thing that all of these tracks have in common with Irwindale. They're drag strips. For years, the motorsport world has been forecasting the death of drag racing. But if you look at the recent uptick in drag strips shutting down, I'd say it's coming up soon. The decline in drag racing can't be attributed to just one thing. Some people say that the sharp end of drag racing has been legislated down to being close to a single-make series of cars that audiences just can't relate to. The Shop magazine did an article last year pointing out that street-legal shootouts get much bigger audiences than nitro dragsters, partially because the cars are actually recognizable. Seeing a whole array of different cars roll up to the lights that all sound, look, and feel different is understandably more of a draw for an audience. Don't get me wrong, seeing a 10,000 horsepower nitro dragster launch is amazing, but seeing that same thing 30 times in a row doesn't apparently hold modern attention spans. The article also says that drag racing is still alive and well at the local level because the writer saw large crowds at an event that he went to at Irwindale.
I wanted that to go different.
While the events that are going on might be well attended, motorsport in general has just gotten harder to maintain. With everything being more expensive, every motorsport has needed to actively grow in order to stay alive. And that just hasn't happened for drag racing. It's easy for boomers to lay the blame on the lack of car culture interest in a younger generation. But that doesn't seem to be happening with other motorsports now, does it, Skip? So why is drag racing suffering? I think it actually comes down to the accessibility of drag racing. On the surface, it's one of the easiest motorsports to get into, second only to autocross and rental karts. But the bar for developing an interest in drag racing is much higher. Think about what got you interested in cars or racing. For many younger folks, it was probably video games. Back in the day, it might have been working in the garage with your dad, or seeing a beautiful V8 muscle car in a showroom, and from there, that initial interest could go in any direction. But in major video games, drag racing is MIA. Short of mobile games, where you try to time the launch and the shifts, I f***ing hate those games. Other motorsports just translate so much more easily into being a video game. A gateway drug like Mario Kart can get a 6-year-old to become a future autocross champion, or a weekend track rat, or even a pro drift driver, but it's a much bigger leap from Rainbow Road to drag racing. And also, think about some of the tracks that we've mentioned already. Most people these days didn't learn about Willow Springs from its glory days as being the fastest road in the West. They saw it for the first time in Gran Turismo. But unfortunately, even an iconic track like Irwindale can't be saved by the NHRA coming out with a banger of an official video game. Drag racing isn't dead, but it's declined enough that maintaining a space for drag racing is getting really expensive. The tracks that are disappearing are the ones that tend to be the least diverse in what they can offer. With the closure of Sac Raceway, Sonoma Raceway is now NorCal's main drag strip, but they also have a road course capable of hosting SRO, NASCAR, IndyCar, ARCA, and drifting. For almost all the other tracks I've mentioned that have recently closed, drag racing was all they had. And while Irwindale does have a half-mile circle track that has hosted the NASCAR Cup Series, NASCAR is actually building a new short track just a couple of miles down the road by shrinking one of its larger ones. The 2-mile oval at Auto Club Speedway closed in 2023 when NASCAR sold most of the land that it sat on to developers. Which brings us back to Irwindale, and the reason why, even with people showing up and regular events, it's still being shut down. And that is because it's sitting on a gold mine of real estate. If you only know one thing about racetracks, and I presume you know more than that, It's that they're big. The track alone takes up a lot of space. Then you have safety and runoff areas, then you have space for support vehicles, then you have room for spectators, and then you have enough parking to support major events. For a racetrack to exist, it has to eat up a ton of valuable real estate. This is the main reason why so many tracks are in the middle of nowhere. If there's any kind of city or town around them, it's usually something that's sprung up because of the racetrack. The town of Watkins Glen has a population of less than 2,000. Laguna Seca isn't actually in Monterey, it's in Salinas. Circuit of the Americas is in the hill country outside of Austin, Texas. Even Indianapolis Motor Speedway isn't in Indianapolis. It's in a town just west called Speedway. Those are some big names. So for a track like Irwindale, the value proposition is even more razor thin. Irwindale is located right next to the freeway and other major transportation arteries that unfortunately make it the perfect place for an industrial park. Although the closure feels like it came out of nowhere, Irwindale has actually been under threat for a long time. In 2015, the city of Irwindale planned to demolish the track and turn the entire facility into a outlet mall. Although that plan eventually died, in 2022 the 63-acre complex was bought by IDS Real Estate, who are now finally making good on their promise to redevelop the property. Straight up, the land underneath a racetrack is valuable, and even when track owners are turning a profit, a big business developer waving a bag of cash under your nose would take some real dedication to turn down. And when you add in pressure from local governments that want to create jobs, I can't blame the owners for walking away. The fact is that even in their heyday, racetracks were never a savvy business investment. They were built out of passion and a love for speed, and at some point, that passion comes face to face with an accountant. The tougher times get, the harder it is to keep that dream alive. So, how do tracks avoid the same fate as Irwindale? Well, it does take passion, and in some places, that's actually enough. The family that owned Bandimere Raceway outside Denver have confirmed that they are building a new, larger facility in 2025. Although they say that residential development isn't the reason they left the old location, the owners are looking at nearly 1,000 acres near the Denver airport, where no one's really building houses. But it's not just about having passionate people behind the track, it's also about having deep pockets. Places like Barber Motorsports Park exist because eccentric millionaires like George Barber put up $80 million of his own money. Thermal Club exists because it's basically a motorsport country club in an area so remote that no one would want to build anything else out there anyway. Money, space, passion. If your local track has all three of those, you might be in the clear. But if not, get your project car off those jack stands and go out and support them. Because if you don't, you might miss your chance. That's all for me this week. Sound off in the comments if your local track needs the community to come out and drive or spectate. And as always, I'll see you in 2 weeks with another story. Thanks for watching.